Hello YouTube, welcome back from my stoep. It's a public holiday here in South Africa today, Women's Day. Apparently every other day is Men's Day. And I'm having a new tobacco which I received recently in my Savinelli Punta Oro Strait. Which is actually very nice. I received Friday. I received one of my orders, which was sent to someone who I know in Canada, who came to South Africa to visit her family, and she brought me one of my orders which I sent there. So thank you to Amelia from Canada for this nice package. This one is British Hoods from McClelland, Frog and Morton on the Bayou, Dark number 5110 Dark English, and Bayou Morning Flake, also by Cornell and Deal, Blue Mountain, and Wilderness. So yeah, I've got a few new ones to try and test. What I'm smoking here is the 5110 bulk English, full English. Very nice tobacco. It's got a very dark roasted chocolatey flavor. Yeah, so very nice. But this is not a review. This is the continuation of my series on South Africa and apartheid and my experiences of it. So today I would like to continue on a few key points or key incidences in South African history, which I think, in my view, played a role in where we are today. And in the next video, I will discuss some of my discussions with my colleagues, because since I've done this video series, obviously that's also in my mind and in my experiences. So I've discussed, I had a week now together with colleagues from different provinces, and I'm the oldest and the whitest of them all, and I actually shared with them some of my viewpoints and very, very interesting discussions that came out from a younger generation and from another perspective, but I'll share that with you later. What I would like to share today to you is one of the key points in our process of democracy, and that was the first one today is the Rivonia trial. Now, the Rivonia trial was in 1963-64, and that was the trial where 10 leaders of the ANC were tried for, about 200 plus acts of sabotage designed to overthrow the apartheid system. So it was named Rivonia because that is where they were captured in Rivonia, close to Johannesburg, or one of the suburbs of Johannesburg, on a farm which they used as a hiding place slash springboard for attacking the then apartheid government. So it was a hideout. And remember, at that stage, the ANC was a banned organization, so obviously they could not operate in a normal environment. So in 1963, they were then captured. 10 of the most of the leaders of the ANC at the time, Govan Mbeki, Raymond Thabo, Dennis Goldberg, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, etc. So the main leaders of the ANC who was at the time in South Africa, because the others were already in exile, or some of them. So the trial was essentially to try and once and for all kill the ANC, make it the whole ANC movement, to try and make them quiet and stop the end of the influence of the ANC into South African politics. And they were on trial for a lot of things, but mainly it's about treason against South Africa, and the usual sentence for treason trials were death penalty. But luckily, the opposition to the death penalty for treason was so vicious that the judge luckily did not impose the death sentence to any of those, and the defense actually was very clever to compare the fight of the ANC at the time to that of the Afrikaners during the Anglo-Boer War and the concentration camp incident, which I shared with you, I think, in my first video. And that's why it was important to give you a little bit of bigger picture of the South African history. So he compared the same plea and the same ideals of the ANC to that of the Afrikaners, and maybe that was part of the reason why the judge could not get to a point of death sentence. So the charges were sabotage and treason and recruiting people for explosive and guerrilla warfare and all kinds of things like But at the beginning of the defense proceedings, or the trial proceedings, it was one of Mandela's. That's the one, I think, probably also the one speech from him, which is still today one of the major speeches that he made, and made a huge influence. He gave a 3-hour speech from the defendant dock, in which he explained the ANC's key political positions, and why he at the time then justified also the movement's decision to increase what shall I say, the armed struggle, because up till then they used the struggle, or the method, or the tactic of a non-violent kind of Gandhi's approach, of a non-violent approach to the state. But as they realized that the state is using the state machinery, including the police and the armed forces, to restrict them, so they then realized, or came to a point where they said that it's no use for them to do the non-violent approach, because it's been greeted by a violent approach from the government. So he in his first speech then tried to explain to the court why the ANC is now turning to a more violent approach, but interesting enough, a violent approach to strategic offices or organizations, not necessarily people. Their whole idea was to attack specific government institutions to minimize the risk of injury and death to people, and that is very important because for all the attacks that they did against the apartheid regime, it was never directed to people, but more to institutions of the apartheid government. And he then also explained why the armed wing and Kontu Sizwe was started and what the aim will be. And his closing words are the words that are echoed around the world, and I think most people will remember those words because he looked the judge in the eye when he spoke these last sentences of him. At one point, his preparation was to say that he would die for this cause, and his advisors told him to not dare, is maybe the right word, but not to dare the judge and the prosecution, to impose the death sentence, but to rather soften the words a little bit. So that's why he added the words "if needs be," and I will read to you the words that he said in 1964 during the trial, which until today is still echoed as the most influential speech that Madiba ever delivered. He said, "During my lifetime, I have dedicated my life to the struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities." And here comes the words that is, up till today, remarkable. "It is an ideal for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But, my Lord, if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Now that was really one of the turning points in South African history in terms of the apartheid government, and to me the Rivonia trial, although it was in 1964, way before the real democratization of South Africa, but it was such an influential speech and a key point in our history. So after that, the prosecution did not officially then ask for the death sentence of the accused, and that's why they eventually did not get the death sentence. Maybe it's part of grace, of God's interception into the history of South Africa, because they were sentenced to a life imprisonment, and that's the start of Nelson Mandela's 27 years of imprisonment. And obviously, this whole trial and the sentence was condemned by United Nations Security Council and all around nations around the world, and that was probably the starting point of sanctions against South Africa. So that was a key point in South African history, the Rivonia trial, where he was eventually captured and sentenced to death. But those words was actually, even when he became president, that was the ideal that he lived for. He will fight against white domination. He will fight against black domination. He and the ANC is searching and looking, and is fighting for an ideal of a democratic, equal South Africa, where every equal right and opportunity to a life full of potential. So he and all the others were sent to Robben Island for hard labor, and later on in his life he was then in another location in Cape Town, where he was held, and that is the imprisonment of Nelson Mandela. What is remarkable to me up till today is the fact that, after 27 years imprisonment, he didn't come out and say, my life has been was robbed from me, my childhood or my adult life or my children or anything. He came out and he said that he will forgive everything that happened, because the ideal was a free, democratic South Africa, and that is one of the key or one of the most admirable characteristics of the character of Nelson Mandela. Although he endured, just imagine yourself 27 years in jail, in the prime of your life, coming out on an age of 70. And then lead your country, and he never tried to wipe out the white community or anything that did this harm to him. He, from day one, he fought as a president for reconciliation and for a democratic South Africa where everyone can enjoy the free society that we lived in. And that's why, to me, Nelson Mandela is probably one of the greatest men that South Africa has ever produced, and actually the world, because the example that he set even after his imprisonment of 27 years was just amazing. So that was one of the key points in South Africa, and in terms of the apartheid government. And interesting, the idea was, the whole idea of the Rivonia trial was to once and for all settle the ANC as a non-existent organization, and looking back, in my view, the Rivonia trial actually boosted the ANC's plea for a democratic society. So they might have lost the case, the court case, but they won the fight at that stage already, because the whole world took notice, and the whole Free Mandela campaign started already at that stage. So it did more for the ANC's cause as what the apartheid government actually hoped for and intended to do through the trial. So one of my next key points in history will be the death of Steve Biko, and then also the Rubicon speech, which was never crossed, and then I'll come back also on those experiences which I've mentioned to you. After discussing it with fellow colleagues, on how they perceive things and how things developed. So it's getting late here. As you can see, it's getting darker. And I'm enjoying this new tobacco, and I'm actually also busy braaiing. I don't want to call it barbecue, because the American barbecue is something different than the Afrikaner braai. I'm going to have some lamb chops and boerewors on a braai. So I have to attend to my fire now. So on that note, friends and community, enjoy your day. While I'm enjoying this full English tobacco. By the way, Tobacco Reviews doesn't give this a very high score, but to me this is really one of the nice tobaccos that I've tried. So thank you for watching, and if you do like, subscribe and leave your comments and ask questions. I'm happy to share my experiences and views with you. Thank you, and enjoy your day.